Like the Populist government failed with its B. They first sent B there. They went and burned villages. You know, that village burning, didn't it look a little weird to you? But then when you sit back now and you look at what they did in their own war, what they did with their nationalists in their country, don't you see the same playbook?
Well, because you have the same director directing the movie. The French orchestrated what they called a pacification of the regions where the Cameroonese nationalists were dominant. And by pacification, obviously, is an euphemism for the brutal murder of people, the destructions of their homes and their communities. And the French are using exactly the same tactics in Ambazonia. Wanton killing, wanton murder of people, not different from what they did in committing a genocide in Rwanda. So we're dealing with the same director behind the scenes.
During the 50s and 70s, that same state reacted against the fighters for independence who wanted independence for Cameroon and were obliterated by the state. If you compare the two, you will see that there are so many similarities. And for instance, the burning of villages. So because now that is what is happening, the state is sending soldiers and they simply randomly burn villages. And they burn older people in those houses, and they kill randomly, and it is amazingly gruesome and amazingly brutal. It's simply genocide, where you have a political class that hasn't renewed itself. You have one political party that has kept the mantle of power since 1956, from 1956 until today. So you have a political personnel. It is really the same people, from the ruling class to the army, the generals, etc. You can have the civil war. You have that's where they had their own training, and that's what they're applying now in the battlefields of southern Cameroon.
You wonder why such a heinous crime in the 60s will be repeated today. Could it be because they got away with it?
They got away with it. They are part of a world system that privileges white supremacy, and those in the periphery or in the native lands that submit themselves to those concepts of white supremacy. And BI is one of them. When you can put a black face in front of those atrocities, then obviously they get away with it. If we look at what happened in Rwanda, I have a book there by, I think his name is Exupéry, I can't remember, who details the French officials who were responsible for that genocide, who orchestrated it, who catered to those who actually carried out the actual killings. They trained them, but no French official has ever been indicted for their role in the Rwandan genocide. They all find black faces, and it fits into the narrative of the natives as wild animals, and the colonizer as the supremacist or supreme being, trying to do the best they can for the natives, which is obviously a reality turned on its head.
As you were talking, I was thinking of a statement I heard Ghanan say.
In Cameroon, the people who got independence are not the people who wanted it. So it is quite particular. It is important to underline it because in the U.S. one tends to take for granted that George Washington, for instance, he fought for independence and he became president. It makes sense. He won, etc., and he became president. That is the logics of history. That is how it should be. And in many African countries, in Zimbabwe, etc., it was like that. So Mugabe fought for independence, he won independence, and etc., etc. In Cameroon, those who became president, etc., until today, they are the people who campaign against independence. So in their political platform was that Cameroonians are not
ripe enough for independence.
Cameroonians need time to be independent. Cameroon should stay colonized. Cameroon should actually not be independent. And they did not want it. That was their platform. Those who said Cameroon should become independent, they were all murdered.
So the people who did not want independence are the people ruling, so they're not ruling an independent country.
No, Cameroon is a colony. Cameroon is clearly, like all the other France-African countries, they're all colonies of France. And, so nothing has changed. I think there have been cosmetic changes. You have a black man as the president. I will call him a black monarch. He's been there for 40 years this November. And the Cameroon has never really been effectively decolonized like the other France-African countries on the continent. And again, that's a convention that has been accepted especially by the Western country, the NATO brigade, and all of those that align with it. And it's something that I think citizens of the Western countries need to be brought up to speed as to what the policies of their countries are in this part of the world.
Yeah, I was going to ask you though that if they got away with it in the 60s, because the 60s was still shortly after the war, and maybe the war was not so much organized, but after how many decades, 60s, 70s, 80s, in 2022 they are doing the same thing and the world is reacting exactly the same. Why?
Because there is something called policy inertia, which means that policies adopted by certain countries is very difficult. They put the policy on autopilot. All of those who come into that system think the same way, they react the same way to the same events. It takes an outside force to come to disrupt that inertia. Slavery lasted for 400 years.
Yes, that's a long time.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
And I can assure you that at the beginning of slavery, there are people who rebelled against it, who never made it to the shores, who never made it out of the boats across the Atlantic because they fought and they defended their humanity to death. Those who, once they landed to the new world, so to speak, they fought and died for it. But it took 400 years of continuous struggle to bring it to an end. There was an inertia, right, that permitted slavery to go for that long. There is an inertia which is permitting this type of atrocities committed by the French in Africa. And we cannot sit and say, well, it happened 50 years ago and it's, that's the reality. But we must find innovative ways to disrupt that inertia, which allows the French to be mass murderers of black people on the continent.
So Ambazonians in these 6 years have overcome the duos that go out and bully people.
I don't show all my happy face. The happy face for you don't finish. When I don't see her all. Now na new face. The same chameleon the worker, he meet up green grass, it become green. When they meet up black, it become black. So I don't want them to show me green grass. But when I want it to show me a red grass. So I will become red. That is the new face of the Jew.
The 20th May, this day, all the chiefs will march with a pancart indicating their village and their population follow behind. If that is not the case, it means those chiefs don't exist.
The governors that think that they are, I don't know what to compare with in modern times other than SS governors in some German occupied, in some Nazi occupied European country.